welcome back to another week of Reflect, and this week we're going to look at Revelation 6 and the first 3 seals. In last week's Reflect video, we came upon a scroll sealed with 7 seals and written on both sides. As important as the scroll is, so are the seals, and in chapter 6 in Revelation is dedicated to the opening of the first 6 seals and the resulting actions that come from it. And the actions are judgment. So we're going from this incredible chapter of worship in Revelation 5 to this chapter of judgment. And we can see a disconnect in our minds, but in reality there's a connect that God is in control, Jesus is victorious, and from that comes the opening of the seals. So we're going to look at the first 3 seals this week and then the next 3 seals next week. So let's begin. We're going to dive into the passage. Normally I've read the whole passage and then reflected. Today we're looking at the first 6 verses of Revelation chapter 6. And as I read today, I'm going to stop after every couple verses and just reflect on the imagery at that point in the preceding verses. So let's start with verses 1 and 2. I watched as the Lamb open the first of the 7 seals. And then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come!" And I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. So here we are now seeing Jesus, the Lamb, begin to open the scroll. And the first 4 seals will each reveal a horse of different colors. The imagery in this, again, is found in the Old Testament, this time in Zechariah chapter 1 and Zechariah 6. So this is not new imagery to the readers. It's one that they'd be familiar with from the old, what we call the Old Testament. But maybe they're images we're not as familiar with. So it can seem new or strange. In Zechariah 1, the horse and riders were sent out by God to patrol the earth. In Zechariah 6, it's horses and chariots. And they're the 4 spirits of heaven to patrol the earth, just like in Zechariah 1. These powerful heavenly beings associated with God is what they are. And these horses and chariots can be seen as representing God's judgment against those who harm God's people. And again, in Revelation, we see the horse and riders as being images of judgment. So the first horse is white. And the color white is a color often associated with heaven and the reality of heaven. We're also going to see later on in Revelation 19 that Jesus rides a white horse. White also means pure and clean. So you could see it as being judgment that comes out of a place of purity and not out of vengeance in that sense. Like there's an authority there, or that it's got a heavenly authority. But what we do need to see in each of these seals is that sense of judgment that's being carried out. And we see that with the first one. And then let's look at the next few verses, verses 3 to 4. And we read, "When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, 'Come!' Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword." So the first horse and rider brought violence to the earth through conquest. And now we see this rider turning people against each other with deadly violence. This rider brings conflict between relationships, and the color red should remind us of blood. Now let's look at the next seal. The first few verses we read, "When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, 'Come!' I looked, and there before me was a black horse. His rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand, and then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine.'" Now, the color black is not a normal color in Scripture. It is used occasionally, but if you look at the idea of darkness instead of black, we're going to see a connection with the image of judgment or threatening of judgment. For instance, in Joel chapter 2, it describes the Lord's judgment as darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness. So we see the image of blackness and darkness present. I think we can tie that into the color black here. And this third horseman is interesting that his weapon is not something typical like the first 2 riders. In this case, it's a set of scales for weighing things, for trade and commerce. And the image we see in this passage is that the price of things is going to go really expensive and just skyrocket. And what we're seeing in the first 2 riders' actions are compounding. The internal and external conflict the first 2 riders bring results in a lack of food or famine that causes things to be very expensive. We need to see in this that things are progressing and moving forward and getting worse even with each rider. We can recognize the actions of these riders are not in isolation of each other. So we're going to stop there this week, and it's quite a different tone from last episode when we ended the chapter with incredible worship of the Lamb. But we cannot forget that worship image as we look at these seals. That the Lamb has the authority, the Lamb has the power, and the Lamb alone is worthy of praise. And that the judgment that's happening, that we see in these seals, is coming under the authority of God. So it can seem harsh for us in our world, but if you think about those who are receiving this letter, who are being persecuted by the world around them, seeing no justice in the world, there can be a sense of encouragement that judgment and justice will come, and God is present and active in the midst of the struggles of the world. This could be an encouragement to them, even though for us it could be maybe scary. So it depends on the context and how you read it. And we need to look at it through the eyes of those who are receiving this letter. It's really meant to show God's sovereignty and power over all. And what an encouraging, wonderful thing that is in a world that's broken. So thanks for joining us this week for another episode. And next week we'll look at the next 3 seals. That'll bring us up to the total of 6 seals at that point. Take care.